Yo, what is going on, everybody? It's Brave Cat here once again with another Frontier Signals update. So I've got quite a few little things to run through here for today. I try not to make these updates too long, but at the same time I do try to provide a very large swath of different things in terms of all of the different geophysical fields and all the stuff that I've been working on, etc. So with that being said, here looking at the website for Frontier Signals, which once again it is live, so you can come here and visit it for yourself. So I actually have the next plans of what I want to add for this ancient history section, and it's going to be pretty big. I'm actually going to be focusing on writing some of my own papers for these things, and I want to basically come out with a detailed kind of description of most, if not all, of the major figures in these fields and catastrophism as a whole, going all the way back to the 15th century, so the 1600s. So there's 4 pretty major things I'm going to be coming out for this, which will be pretty awesome, I think. But anyways, let's get right into things. So starting off at the space weather side, hopefully everything here cooperates pretty well here. We do see the SDO feeds are back online again. However, all of these clips here are pretty much 1 second in length, so it's really not showing anything here. We do have a lot of bright active regions and sunspots facing us. But once again, as seems to be the usual now, we do see a pretty big anomaly or data cutoff once again for today. So this is several days now. Kind of wish I was keeping track at this point, but several days now, every single day, we seem to have some sort of glitch in the feed, and we do have a KP of 5 happening right now. So we have a minor solar storm, and this seems to be for pretty much no reason. Now, again, I'm not an expert. I don't have a full deep knowledge on all of these subjects, but looking at all the charts and everything going on, I really don't see any good reason for us to have a minor solar storm happening right now, besides the fact that simply the magnetic field is weakening and Earth becomes a lot more sensitive to pretty much anything going on. So looking through everything, we have the Enlil spiral, and it does not look like we're being hit by the heliocentric current sheet, and we have no coronal hole facing us, and everything else looks pretty good here. So the only other guess that I have is the fact that the magnometer kind of did a pretty rapid spike downwards here in the magnetism. And that's pretty much the only thing I could even relate this minor solar storm with. We don't even have anything showing up on the aurora forecasts. So again, it's a bit of an anomaly happening, most likely due to the fact that Earth's magnetic field, the actual shield protecting us from these things, has significantly weakened by this point, roughly by about 50%, which is quite significant. But again, other than that, we're just waiting to see what these sunspots are going to actually be capable of, and whether or not we get any major Earth-directed solar flares, especially with a CME component. And taking a look at the far side sunspot images, we do see the gray and white regions have completely just exploded, basically. They have developed quite a bit. Meanwhile, the pink region here has continued to diminish quite a bit. So that's just, I guess, take it for what it's worth. And I'm probably going to take things into the earthquake section because there's pretty much the most of everything is to deal with that moving forward here. So let's take a look at EQ3D. I forgot to put it on this screen here, so sorry if that was a little bit epileptic. Might have to put a seizure warning in front of this video just because of that. So anyways, things are looking quite messy for this week. So I'm going to try to kind of narrow it down and give us a good picture of what is really going on here, because the Western Pacific is looking like a mess in terms of the earthquakes on here. So I'll take down the rings a little bit and we'll filter through as we go here. So looking at the biggest activity for the entire week, again, we still have that deep 6 that is potentially going to have an effect on the surrounding regions for a larger, shallower earthquake. So most likely in the Vanuatu region, but perhaps even in between New Zealand and the Fiji region. And then going out from there, we have 2 newish regular 6.0 earthquakes here. So one of them is out here southeast of Japan and in the kind of the Marianas Trench / islands kind of area. And then we do have another 6 down here off of Indonesia, and this is right next to one of the main volcanoes that's been erupting. I think it's called Merapi. So we're gonna need to look at what is the most likely spots to be hit next, and this little watch period hopefully isn't going to be anything too serious here. Again, we're working with 6s, and resulting from the deep 7 that we had here, it looks like there was nothing major coming from that. So we're basically just looking at what we actually see on here, which, even though it looks like quite a lot, isn't actually as much as it seems. However, a couple of questionable areas here are going to be where this ongoing swarm is for 5s and mid-range 4s here. So this is a pretty significant ongoing swarm. And then we also have the one down here in Australia. I guess I'll just quickly pick up the feed here, although we do get some duplicates coming out of there, so that's why I had it turned off. But it looks like we do have the swarm here that's in the southwestern tip. It looks like that has started to persist a little bit more, and given the fact that we have some activity down here as well and activity going on up here, it could be not necessarily part of the forecast, but it wouldn't be out of the question to see something significant coming out of here. Again, we're not talking about anything devastating, just something significant to watch out for in that region, as well as we're going to be looking at all of the quiet zones that are currently here, which does include Japan. So that is going to be sort of in the watch area here for a potentially significant earthquake. Again, we have a lot of variables here. There's volcanic activity, there's this swarm of pretty significant earthquakes here at one of these southern islands, and then we have the 6 and the resulting aftershocks going on this side of the plate, and then we also have everything going on in the Pacific Northwest regarding Alaska and Kamchatka. So Japan seems to be a little bit just right in the middle of all of those crossroads, so it could be potential to see something significant, maybe in the 6 to mid-range 6. I don't really see anything bigger potentially happening in this area. And looking at the other quiet zones, again, we have Papua New Guinea has not had anything major in a minute, and then just kind of focused on the central Indonesia region here. But again, just throwing out the random ass woo-woo dream that I had a few days ago about something potentially major earthquake-wise happening up here right above Myanmar, right here at the bend in the plate, pretty much at the eastern side of the Himalayas. Just going to keep rocking with that idea just because why not? If I'm wrong, does it really matter? And if I'm right, then that's pretty crazy. So just throwing that out there again. We have had a couple of other deep events happening, again, over here by Japan. So that's also why this seems to be the next likely focal point in the next several days to potentially watch for something significant to happen. And meanwhile, while everything on the west side of the Pacific is happening, We do still have the United States going into Mexico and Central America to worry about, and even up here off of the coast of Canada. So we haven't seen anything major happening, roughly somewhere around here off of the Vancouver Island kind of region here. So could see something happening there. And then also on the southern end, looking at kind of the Gulf of California area, Southern California, somewhere over here could be likely to see some activity over there as well. And we're kind of looking at the 5 range potentially for the West Coast, while we are looking at the 6 range pretty much guaranteed to be ongoing over here in the west side of the Pacific, and then just kind of rounding that off over here in Europe. See, things are pretty scattered over here, but we have 4s kind of on the outer skirts of Europe, and just a bunch of random 2s and 3s kind of throughout. And I didn't see anything major going on in Italy on that other volcano discovery website, so nothing too crazy there. Again, I do still think there's going to be a general spike of activity going through Europe this year compared to previous years. But those spikes do happen every once in a while, kind of corresponding with, several years gap between those spikes. But just kind of taking things back here again, let me just double check because I did write down some things. So Papua New Guinea, central-ish, Indonesia, and then we got the woo-woo stuff going on over here. Japan seems pretty likely. And then, so just kind of recapping what we got going on in the United States. Nothing much going on the tremor map or the other Pacific Northwest earthquake feed. But on here, we do see some earthquakes going on up here in the kind of northern end of Washington. And again, we do see a lot of the same spots being hit on the West Coast, Nevada, and Texas. So this down here in Nevada, this is most likely just due to the previous nuclear testing that they did going on here. I'm sure it definitely did a number on the plate itself and caused all sorts of perforation points where seismic energy is more likely to hit. And along with the drill points when we look at oil and gas, fracking, all that sort of stuff. So actually it does change things up to where a lot of the pressure coming into these regions are going to be dispersed from these locations. So all these random tremor swarms and spots that are weaker in the crust, partially due to man-made activity, does actually help out a little bit in the favor of pressure being released and less likelihood for something to be able to build up for a bigger event. But again, with that being said, we are going to be looking for some sort of uptick here, especially off the coast, going from Vancouver down here to the Gulf of California, for seeing potential 5s to maybe start to encroach in on that area here. Looking down at Central America, we previously had a bunch of 4s and all that stuff, various volcanic activity. So just kind of looping that into what we see going on here on volcano discovery, because any sort of major volcanic eruption or activity is definitely going to play a part in what we see potentially for the earthquakes. But so far we seem to have more or less the same activity, which is kind of a double-edged sword here. We do have ongoing moderate volcanic unrest, but it hasn't gone above that point. So that's just kind of how it is. And again, looking back here at the space weather, if we have any potential, well, we do have potential for major solar events. So if there is any major solar flaring happening, especially within the next few days, that will also immediately spike things up here on the watch list for both areas. So I didn't see anything too out of the ordinary here. Then even going into today, because this is a evening update. again, there's a lot of the similar kind of activity happening, mostly in South America and West Pacific. So I think that'll pretty much actually wrap it up in terms of the geophysical stuff going on here. Kind of blew through that, but I think that pretty much covers it here. Looks pretty messy, but there's really specific things to focus on here. Again, looking at deep events, looking at major events, looking at quiet zones in between, and all that stuff here. So that pretty much covers it there. Okay, well, I wish I muted that. Hopefully there's nothing more as I wrap this up here over on the Solarkillshot network. So I'm going to shout this out again because, again, this is just a fabulous place, honestly. So it is primarily a lot of observers on here, meaning people from Ben Davidson. But to be honest, Ben Davidson hasn't really interacted a whole lot, or really much at all, in the forums or kind of at large. You know, he has his connection to it, but for the most part, we've all just been kind of going at it with our own ideas, our own theories, open discussions, survival groups, off-grid stuff, you know, all that good stuff. So, I mean, really, I see potential for Solarkillshot to be able to be a place where people kind of outside of the suspicious observer's realm to come in here, at least take a look around, maybe, you know, see what's going on. And this place has been extremely welcoming, as long as people aren't coming in here to cause any trouble or just intentionally cause friction in some way. As long as you're open to just discuss things like a regular person, you know, pretty much everything flies on here as long as it is mostly on topic. Again, you can always reach out to people through the DMs on here to have those other private off-topic conversations and whatnot. But I'm going to continue to kind of bolster this and shout it out where necessary, because it has just been a wonderful place for people to come together, people who are not planning on relying for the current systems that are in place in this world, the current power struggles that are in play. No, this is about creating parallel institutions and basically subverting as much of clown world as we can, and just making a life for ourselves instead of having to rely on supply chains, on propaganda, whatever the next crappy false flag is going to happen, whatever it is. So a lot of those people on here are very much geared towards that, and it is a powerful place that is growing, and this year is going to be a big year, and I'm going to say that quite a few more times. You know, this year really is the year of the prepper, and that is such a, at this point, that is such an all-inclusive title to have. Okay, like maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the term prepper was pretty much coined with, you know, anti-socialism, like, you know, being off the radar from society. But at this point, it's just growing into a more broader term of people that are just completely fed up with the system. They don't trust it. They don't want to have to rely on it in any way, so on and so forth. So again, this is going to be a pretty awesome hub for all those activities to happen, with some of the best sets of knowledge and skills from other people to learn from. And as far as I know, I'm really one of the only Gen Z taking part in this. It's a little bit of a crisis, I would say. There are others, and the other people that I've met close to my age group are incredible people, but there's few of us, I would say not even dozens, kind of remotely interested in these sorts of things. But, you know, it's just going to be proven to be true as time goes on. So that is also why I want to cover as much as I can. So with that, I'm just going to wrap things up back here on the website, where I did add, well, I'm not sure if I updated it fully yet, but I've been working on getting a few more papers on here. especially the this one. Actually, I recently added this section specifically for planetary observation. And again, we're working with actual peer-reviewed papers here regarding changes that have been happening on other planets in the solar system that have basically not been observed throughout recordable human history. And people have been looking at the planets for centuries now. Even though the technology has only gotten better, there's actually a pretty surprising amount of detailed things that previous astronomers and whatnot have been able to cover in the last several hundred years. And that'll also tie right in with the papers that I'm currently writing that will hopefully soon be on this ancient history tab with different cosmologists and a wide variety of other people related to the catastrophism field at large. So with that, I think I'll just wrap things up there. So hope you all enjoyed this one, got something out of it. Please like and subscribe for more. Commenting also does definitely help out. And other than that, I will catch you all in the next.